endurance performance means something in the context of health. The VO2 max is really just a proxy of this. The real marker of a healthier, longer life is not this number that fluctuates a little bit week to week, but it's the resilience physically, resilience mentally that you're gaining from doing the work.
This is Generation Health. We bring you the latest news, cutting-edge research, and time-tested best practices helping you live a longer, healthier life. With me, Dante DiMatteo, PharmD. How are you, my friend?
Doing well, thanks. How are you?
I'm great. This is Joey DiMatteo, PharmD, board-certified clinical nutritionist. You doing all right?
Yeah, doing great. Thank you.
All right. Mic number 4, Josiah Schweinberg, engineer extraordinaire. Stoic as always. And I'm Tyler Andrews, your host.
You didn't ask.
I didn't. I don't care.
Okay.
That's not true. How you doing?
I'm fine.
We talked about your minivan, so
I'm doing fine.
minivan repairs stink for everyone.
Yeah, I'm doing fine.
Now it sounds depressing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing excellent. I'm recovering well. I'm breathing well. My oxygen levels are well.
Next episode in the minivan before you part ways.
Next episode from the new minivan.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. All right. Dante, you've got a big topic here, VO2 Max. We're going to talk about that in a little bit of detail. I've been working very hard all year on improving my VO2 Max. And I like to watch the number go up and to the right, which is backwards for the camera, up and to the right that way. Because, I like a simple number that I can track. Hey, I'm doing better. This is good. This is good for my heart. I'm getting better. I'm healthier.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last couple times I've run, my VO2 max has actually decreased according to my watch, which is very frustrating because that's not, no, I did the run. It should go up. If I sat around, fine, it can go down, but I didn't sit around. I did the run. Why is it going down? We're not here to counsel me. What's going on with VO2 max? Tell me about this. And why I think you're going to tell me that maybe it's a little too much of a focus for me.
Yeah, that was quite the setup there. So to your point, I see a lot of people, including myself, initially worrying about how this number, what it is and how it changes over time, because it is a quick and dirty way to see if some of the endurance exercise that you're doing is paying off or not. So I'm with you. I relate to that. I know a lot of people do. The issue is, or the interesting part is, there was a paper from July or August kind of calling into question the usefulness of VO2 max in terms of metabolic outcomes. And then there was also just additional information that Steve Magnus has put out.
Okay.
It's in one of his older books. It's in a lot of his newer information, just calling into question VO2 max as a, is this really the holy grail performance indicator for endurance sports? So to me, it was just like, hey, we talked about this recently. We talk about it in our sort of, health and fitness related conversations. This article comes out kind of casting sort of a shadow onto it. And then also, now these Steve Magnus perspectives that we'll talk about. It just made me want to revisit this and maybe help recenter and edit maybe some of what we talked about earlier on.
Sure. Absolutely.
So as a refresher here, just looking at what the specific metric is, VO2 max.
What is VO2 max?
Right. At its core, it's measuring maximal oxygen consumption. Essentially, this is just a measure of how efficiently your body can transport and utilize this oxygen during intense exercise. So a lot of people describe it as like the horsepower of the human body. The higher the VO2 max, the more oxygen ultimately you can deliver to the working muscles. So it's no secret that, the higher that somebody's VO2 max is, you can reliably predict that whatever their primary endurance pursuit is likely also going to be better than somebody with a much lower VO2 max. So it's not that like we're going to debunk this as a metric, but It's just, again, it kind of reel people in with how seriously and how much we, look at this.
Absolutely. So, and just for frame of reference, the oxygen consumption, the reason that's relevant isn't just because you're breathing heavy. The reason you're breathing heavy is because you're doing work. Your muscles need oxygen to convert ATP. Is that right?
Essentially, yes.
To be able to do the work.
Yes, there's a kind of a requisite supply required at the level of the muscle, more or less, to for you to be able to continue a task.
Right.
And so, if in the context of testing a VO2 max, they see basically how quickly you begin to peter off, or when this measurement plateaus and you're essentially maxed out.
Got it.
On oxygen, but. Yes, so that
the point at which breathing heavier isn't going to actually help you. Your heart is doing everything it can to transport the oxygen. You're just done.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So if we, I think, I mentioned Steve Magnus.
Who is Steve Magnus?
So Steve Magnus, he is a exercise researcher. He's an author, and then he was also a competitive runner.
Okay.
So he has a mile time of around 4 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
Give or take. So he is he's at the tip of the spear as far as endurance sports goes in terms of his own performance.
Yeah.
And he's coached many people, but then he also has the kind of the dual effect with his own research and just his understanding of, science, and also the hands-on part of coaching that sometimes hit science and the art of coaching at odds. So he's like this perfect blend of it that I'm able to apply to endurance stuff, and it has this nice carryover into some of the health topics as well, obviously.
Okay.
So, his perspective is really important, again, just because he's not saying that it's useless. He's just arguing that it's overemphasized. His view is basically that a high VO2 max is simply a prerequisite for high level endurance performance. It kind of gets you in the door of a well-trained athlete, but it's not the predictor at the end of the day of who's going to have the best time.
Right.
And ultimately that's what matters in terms of performance. So knowing somebody's VO2 max, if our VO2 max, if we were elite athletes and ours were both in the 70s, all you would be able to garner from that is that, I have two pretty good athletes in front of me.
Sure.
Who's going to win? I don't know.
Yeah.
Who's healthier? I don't know. Probably similar. It's just, it can be limited in that respect. Again, it's not a predictor of who wins. Most people can agree with that. It's kind of just like saying, hey, this is reflective of somebody who has a pretty powerful engine. You need one to compete, but it doesnh necessarily
It's not the be all end all.
Yes. So if you go all the way back to, some of the research of VO2 max, what it was, what that VO2 max plateau was, as defined as like this definitive physiological ceiling is what they called it then. Magnus was basically just pointing out that in well-trained athletes, this number plateaus quicker, and becomes less useful than, versus other populations. That, the heart can only get so big, and at some point, the chase for this increased VO2 max is almost worthless once you get to a certain point.
Sure.
Now it's, if you look at this too, in terms of improving your mile time, let's say, once you're running around a 4 minute, you're hard pressed to say there's much improvement from there.
Yeah.
And at that point, a second is a huge improvement. 2 seconds, those are massive improvements. These guys work their whole life off for those types of improvements.
Yeah. No, my VO2 max my watch was nice enough to inform me that my VO2 max was I was in the bottom 35% of my age bracket, which that's a horrifying thing to find out. And so for me, getting out of the bottom 35%, I just wanted I wanted to improve it. And obviously it wouldn't take much to improve when you're already down at the bottom. Anything is a big jump up. I'm now in the top 30% of my age group. Great. But I'm only it's 45, 46 estimate on my watch. And that's I think a 18 or 20 point increase over what it was. And it took a spring and a summer of running basically to get to that point. So the number is going in the right direction, that's a good goal. There's nothing wrong with that. But you're saying that ultimately as a predictor of top end improvement, it's not ideal.
Exactly. And also it's kind of what is it like? What is it telling you that you don't already know? You know, if you look at your performance, your easier mile splits are faster. You can run longer. You can do the same runs that you did 4 months ago faster now.
Yeah.
You know, so it's already it's already there.
It's information you knew.
Yes, exactly. You're doing the same workouts at most days at a lower heart rate, so
Right.
lower perceived effort. Those are the things that VO2 Max are just kind of reiterating. And we have this expensive lab equipment and all these crazy things that we hook people up to.
Right.
That you're like wondering that, man, there's a simple field test often that you could look at, and that's kind of what leads us into the next point is what. If you're really interested in performance, let's say, and then we'll kind of get off the Steve Magnus thing for a bit, but what should you look at then, theoretically, since, VO2 Max is suddenly worthless? It's running economy, for example, and this would apply to, let's say if your modality of choice isn't running, let's say it was cycling or swimming.
Yeah.
It's the economy of that specific movement. Again, that's a limiter of tests, in that you can test somebody's VO2 max, who they may not be the best runner. Some of the data that you garner from that is because of their inefficient cardiorespiratory fitness, or is it also the method?
Yeah,
right?
the adaptation that they're an elite biker, but if they have to run. So
exactly. So if we look at, we'll just call it running economy, and he also suggests lactate threshold. So running economy is almost like if you look at it as a car's fuel efficiency, the amount of oxygen that you consume to maintain a given speed.
Okay.
And then if you look at an athlete with a high VO2 max and poor economy, which is an example we alluded to, this is like having a super fast car with like the worst tires or really heavy tires or bad tread or something like that they're not limited by what they're capable of, but there's some ancillary component that's diminishing their return.
Got it.
So we're talking about my minivan again.
Exactly.
Is that
Yeah,
what's
exactly.
going on?
we put a Porsche engine in it, but it's still a minivan.
But the wheels are falling off the thing.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's the amount of oxygen, if you're looking at running economy, the amount of oxygen you consume to maintain a given speed.
Okay.
And so that's why when you're exercising and you're training, it's like weight on the bar, in that you need to pay attention to your pacing, not to be overly analytical. There's nothing wrong with just going out and running and changing speeds as you feel. That's a huge part of what we do, right? But there's also, again, something to, what does it feel like? What does it feel like? What is happening under the hood when I'm running at this speed that I've run at, and what's the amount of oxygen I can maintain at this speed? Those are the things that matter, as opposed to some like arbitrary rise on a curve that eventually tapers off. But the second one that we mentioned was lactate threshold.
Yes.
This is basically the highest pace you can sustain before lactate builds up in your blood faster than it can clear. A higher lactate threshold just means that you can run at a faster pace for a longer time before you fatigue. This also doesn't mean you just hammer lactate threshold workouts all the time either, because they do have the potential to drive fatigue in different ways. Lactate doesn't automatically equal fatigue. It's not lactic acid. It's not, I'm sure that might be starting to register in some people's brains. Lactate is, it's like one of the common thoughts at this point is that your brain perceives these products like lactate, like the presence of it, as a way to say, hey, maybe it's time to start slowing down. Maybe this is when we should get tired as a protective measure. Got it. As opposed to, well, lactate is this product in and of itself that's tiring out muscles, which we've kind of determined is not the case. So it's just an interesting kind of tangent there. So you don't just hammer lactate threshold workouts. You want a mix of workouts. You run hills, incorporate hills in your long runs. And then, if you just do enough of this high intensity work with a little bit of thought, you can boost the ceiling on your lactate threshold. So then when you go, test a mile, or you test a distance that means something to you, that you find that pace, and then you're able to sustain that pace, that hard pace, for longer. And then the goal is to just continue to essentially just raise your floor of what, it's more of a performance thing than it is like this. I need a blood test. I need a mask. I need this thing to tell me, or something on my watch to tell me that I'm getting fitter or slower.
Yeah.
A lot of it's kind of out there in the real world.
How does it feel?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And some of that makes sense. I remember, I mean, I haven't been consistently running in quite some time, but when I had first started, my neighborhood is all hills. And I would just run out there, and sometimes I'd have to walk the hills, but my heart is, running, and I'm breathing heavy, and, I'm trying to max out, I guess, what is known as lactate threshold. And then, finally, after months of doing this, I hit a trail that's all level, and I'm like, man, I'm crushing it. Like it felt, I'm like, I chalked it up to at the time because I didn't know some of this, this information, but I just chalked up to, I was training on hills. So I had that, maybe muscle buildup or endurance, but this makes a little bit more sense in that regard.
I mean, it seems like functionally that's the case, that you were giving yourself a heavier workout and then you got fitter and then you did something relatively easy by comparison. Is that fair to say?
Definitely. Again, I mentioned that, we saw this paper about max oxygen consumption and metabolic health, which we can touch on quickly. We have Steve Magnus's perspective. You have other, high profile people out there, again, talking about the Norwegian 4x4 and these VO2 max type workouts. And it's fine. It's fine to try harder workouts, right? It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine to whatever you need to do to mix in some intervals. It doesn't have to be the most optimal thing. That's fine. But to put VO2 max as this on the pedestal of do these workouts because I need a higher VO2 max. So that means that I'm healthier.
Right.
I have better, my heart is healthier. It's just we're nitpicking the way that we should really be looking at. It's just that endurance performance means something in the context of health. The VO2 max is really just a proxy of this.
Right.
And so the real marker of a healthier, longer life is not this static number, this number that fluctuates a little bit week to week, but it's the resilience physically, the resilience mentally that you're gaining from doing the work, right? Like there's no pill that we can design up to this point that says like, if you take this, then we look at your VO2 max, it's higher.
Right.
That I'm aware of. There might be something, EPO or something like that. Performance enhancers might have some effect on that, but not in terms of longevity. It's really still just boils down to the work. Are you doing the work? Are you getting better at doing the work? Is the work a load that you can handle? That's the end all be all.
Yeah.
Not this metric that is tempting to track and very tempting to perseverate over. And sure, I'm still going to look at mine just as much as I did before learning this, but it just shifts your perspective too, in terms of why am I doing this exercise? Why am I running this Norwegian 4x4, crushing myself, these 4-minute intervals, because these experts are telling me that's what I need to boost my VO2 max. It's like, no. Endurance and heart health and cardiorespiratory fitness, it's this huge puzzle that you need to slot in all these different types of things that is just this continual boulder that you're moving, and not this, it's not a blood pressure reading, right? It's not a blood glucose reading. This is much different. This is, you're rewarded in the work that's being done.
I heard this said about something else recently. It's not one golden bullet. It's 1,000 silver BBs. That's the way you improve the thing.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Josiah.
Sorry. Is this anyway? So VO2 max buzzword, right? Which I think is why we're talking about it. Another buzzword is, and we've talked about this, like zone 2.
Mm-hmm.
Are these related in any way? Like how does zone 2 affect VO2 max, or how are they related? Lactate threshold, all like these are these buzzwords that I hear, and I'm like, so I don't track any of this stuff. So it's informative for me to hear.
Yeah. I mean, case in point, right? You hear zone 2, and I've been guilty of this as well. You hear it being thrown out constantly. Zone 2, it's just referring to a lower heart rate zone in what's already an arbitrary 5 or 8 zone heart rate model. So you take complex things, you take phenomena that you witness in somebody performing or lab tests or whatever, and then you have to break it up into something that's a little more manageable, or break it up into something that you can then, deliver to somebody to improve. Or it's like, right, there's something to heart rate in terms of exercise, right? Like it is useful to know that when if you're out running or biking, if your heart rate's 175 the entire time, it's a good way to know that, man, I was probably pushing it a little harder than what I meant to do.
Right.
But again, it's all based on this arbitrary heart rate zones that all people are, to be charitable, all people are really telling you to do is to maybe cut back on some of the high intensity stuff and mix in this zone 2 or this lower perception of effort work. Because we know it's better, the more conditioning that the more that you can get in, the better. And if it's all this Norwegian 4x4, then it's going to be very hard to show up and do day in and day out.
Would it be fair to say that if you're thinking about it in terms of like a Norwegian 4x4 is a maximal effort exercise, which will then require maximal rest to recuperate from, versus zone 2 low intensity cardio work is easy to recover from, and therefore you can do it more often and get more in, and that ultimately, if the goal is health, that it really does, to a large extent, come down to the number of steps you put in, how much time you actually were able to do the work. And if all you do is the super intense stuff, you're not going to be able to do it as often without just getting really beat up.
Exactly. Understanding why you're doing a certain type of exercise is important. It's like you're seeking what adaptation are you seeking? If you don't have really a large base of fitness, or you're kind of new to running, then again, something like you said, lower intensity, easier to show up and do day in and day out is probably a really good place to start. But on the flip side, that also applies to elite runners who we perceive as people who are going hard all the time. Just because their floor is higher doesn't mean that they are at a 9 out of 10 effort every day.
Right.
And ultimately, it's not just zone 2 for the sake of zone 2. There's a whole underlying physiology that is, that there are benefits to doing sustained exercise for a long time that do differ slightly from doing 1 minute on, 3 minute off. Like it just depends on what you're going for. So in order to theoretically build this base of endurance health or fitness, you want to be touching those different components is all that it is.
So zone 2 is just another metric or quantifiable way to adjust your workouts. It's another silver BB or whatever your illustration was.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, the 5 zone model just describes it as 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. And so it is a nice framework for people who just won't, if you can't get them to go easy, it's a good framework to say, hey, look, where you have your watch, where was your heart rate? If this run was supposed to be easy and you go out there and it feels hard and your heart rate's really high, it's not wasted, but you're not in the long run. Maybe wasn't the best. Those aren't the best decisions to be making on a consistent basis. But at the same time, if you run and it feels easy and your heart rate starts to go up, then that's not the end of the world either. It's not like, and that's the other thing is people feel like, oh, well, if you're crossing zones when you're doing things, then you're missing out on the adaptation, or you got to quickly correct course. And that's not the case either. It's just, again, we needed some way to classify these things. And so it's not the end of the world if you're bouncing between zones. In fact, that's probably beneficial, because if you're running a race or if you're doing life, things don't necessarily fit into these neat little boxes that we design.
Yeah.
But again, all that is a heart rate zone that is theoretically efficient at using fat as your primary fuel source, whereas higher intensity efforts, you're tapping more into glycogen stores, carbohydrates. You think of things that are harder to recover from. Play in football, those kind of those faster things.
For anybody that wants to find out more about both of these things, episode 25 is called Cardio Anyone Can Do, is all about zone 2 fitness. There's a whole big long conversation about it there. So lots of stuff on that. And I think the last time we talked about VO2 Max was actually all the way back on episode 38, which was about smartwatch metrics that are useful. Joey, how's your VO2 Max?
I don't know. I need to start checking it.
Look,
After listening to this, I'm going to start checking
you're wearing
it.
the watch.
I know, and I don't wear it when I work out. Behind on the technology of working out.
That's like the whole point of having that, isn't it?
It makes no sense. But this, I'm going to start.
Okay.
I'm going to start.
All right. We'll check back in
Needed
later. We'll let you know what Joey's VO2 Max is, because that's what everybody's here for. Awesome. Thank you very much. We've got a question in from a listener. We're going to say we changed the names to protect the innocent. Eunice said, I love a glass of red wine, but my face turns bright red almost instantly, and I feel awful. It seems to happen most with wine. Is there a trick or something I can take so I can enjoy a glass without getting that awful face rush? Well, that's unfortunate, but not shocking. I've actually heard about this before. What's going on here?
So there's a lot more to unpack here than maybe, what meets the eye initially. So what's happening to address it right away is an alcohol flush reaction. And what it is it's really a genetic health warning sign. So
Interesting.
So it's basically showing that your body is having a little more trouble than it normally would, or than someone else would, in processing alcohol, in dealing with the byproducts of processing alcohol, and dealing with the products of this entire sort of chain of events,
chemical family.
Yes, that eventually, that we know now is carcinogenic. So can cause cancer, can cause lots of other issues. So again, on its surface, we got this, physiological response or pathophysiological response showing that there's something going on under the hood, when our body already has, for the average person, a difficult time processing it, as evidenced by the long-term health effects of alcohol, the short-term effects of alcohol,
right,
with a hangover.
Yeah.
So this may resonate with many people.
Okay. So what are those chemical issues? What are we talking about here? I mean, obviously we can just say, well, it's alcohol and that's what it does, but let's get specific.
Yeah. So firstly, when alcohol is consumed, it's broken down into acetaldehyde. This is the well-known toxic metabolite.
Okay.
It's a known human carcinogen, and it has the potential to actually damage DNA. The second important enzyme, at least in this discussion, is aldehyde dehydrogenase 2. And not also, but 2, the number 2.
Got it.
It's supposed to help clear that acetaldehyde, turning it into a more harmless byproduct that we can get rid of. And so what we'll see down the line is that there are issues with this causing more of the bad stuff to hang around.
Okay. So what is that process?
So the flush reaction actually occurs when you have, like I said, a slow working or a genetic issue with that specific enzyme. And there are other enzymes involved, but specifically with this one, ALDH2, we'll refer to it as, there are many individuals of Eastern Asian descent.
I knew it.
Yeah, it's prevalent in that demographic, but can definitely be more widespread. But that's where most people hear about it.
I had an Iranian friend that told me she and all of her family would turn purple every time they drank alcohol.
Wow.
And then I saw them at their wedding, and it was true.
Yeah, it's not pleasant, and what we'll get into some more of the symptoms and stuff, but for some people it is mild flushing. For others, it's the flushing and then it's tachycardia and it's swelling and it's this histamine response that for some people is not just this one thing. It's kind of a whole nasty chain of things, which, for some can serve as a nice natural deterrent from drinking. Unfortunately, you want to be able to have a drink, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for these people, sometimes all it takes, if you're one of the unlucky ones, is a glass of wine or a couple beers to kind of hit the far end of the spectrum. So
it's not specific to wine, like particular to wine.
It's not specific to wine. And we'll get into,
Sorry.
we'll get into some of that. Wine, there are some like aspects of it that can exacerbate the problem. Yeah, I guess if you had to choose, maybe you choose a clear alcohol versus, that whole discussion
I was going to
plays
ask
a role.
if different types of wine.
I don't know if that's like just more anecdotal, to be honest, than anything, but there's some like chemistry basis to it, but yeah.
Well,
so again,
it's frustrating. You want there to be a better thing or a safer thing, because I know I have my preference and I like whiskey, but if a beer is offered to me, I'm like, nah, I'm good. But if somebody offers me a really nice bourbon, I'm much more tempted. So the idea that it's alcohol itself seems to be the problem. That's frustrating. That's disappointing.
Yeah.
So what does this person need to know other than, that's your body saying, please stop?
So again, we know that with this specific enzyme, if there's a deficiency, then we're going to be slowing down the clearance of these toxic byproducts. So again, there's just more that sticks around, and
does that mean that inebriation happens faster too?
Not necessarily.
Okay. It's just the byproducts. Okay.
Yes, exactly. There are also other, there's like a synergistic role of these other variants of alcohol, acetaldehyde dehydrogenase. And the issue is, if there are people that carry, let's just say, we'll call it the fast producing version and the slow clearing version of the enzyme, then the toxic, byproduct is then not only generated at a faster rate, and then it's cleared even more slowly. So there's an enzyme that
builds up even faster.
Yeah. So you get the buildup of the acetaldehyde happens even faster. And then once it all builds up, the enzyme that's supposed to be assisting in clearing it is also not functioning properly. And then you have an instance where somebody is like bombarded with, all of the most toxic parts of alcohol consumption, which again, that lead to more of the serious complications that can arise. And this is more than just the facial flushing.
Right.
So, it's just, again, that's just more or less to highlight really what's happening under the hood. And in this particular individual's case, I don't think it's this bad.
Right.
Maybe it is more of a reflection of an issue that this person has with the red wine versus other alcohols. But there's more that we can kind of unpack as well.
So the question asks if there's a trick with the red wine, or if there's anything they could do. I know I've seen different people use different additives they put in their red wine to reduce the not tannins. There's another term I can't think. The one that gives you the headache afterward. Mm-hmm. Is that legitimate? Is that relevant to this conversation? Is there anything?
It is definitely relevant. We would say firstly that no matter the alcohol, if this is a sensation that's occurring, if this is a response that's occurring, then there's a good chance that some level of this is happening regardless of the alcohol. So first and foremost, this is clearly a failure at somewhere along the line of the enzymes that are supposed to be processing alcohol. Now, with red wine specifically, because they naturally contain a higher level of biogenic amines, including histamine itself, then you might have a additive effect. So we already know that the histamine internally, that response is ramped up, and then you have exogenous histamine possibly in the beverage you're consuming. So we think that maybe that has something to do with this potent, again, vasodilatory effect, this potent headache causing effect. And so in their case, it doesn't matter which one it is, but no, it's probably both leading to this. So this person, again, they're producing massive amounts of their own histamine, clearly, or some amount of histamine. They're simultaneously ingesting something that has higher levels of histamine from the wine. This is a kind of a nasty combination. Maybe if you consumed a lower histamine drink, or think of a lower calorie clear mixed drink.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. Maybe you have a little more success with that. But that's kind of where I want to maybe change course.
Yeah.
And not sit here and tell somebody to drink, not to drink, just do this one weird thing and you can avoid it. I think it just, it calls into question like, hey, now we have some data that if you are somebody that experiences these reactions, we can assume that you maybe more than the average person have more of the toxic products sticking around than somebody who is maybe processing alcohol a little more effectively.
Right.
So if I drink, 20 drinks a month and you drink 20 drinks a month and we have different capacities of the enzymes that we refer to clear and to process the alcohol, maybe our health outcomes look a little bit different because let's say you have more of the bad stuff sticking around. So
right.
That's a vast oversimplification of it, but if you are somebody experiencing these effects, it just is one more reason to consider curtailing the extent at which you are consuming alcohol.
Yeah. As unfortunate as it is,
Right.
It doesn't seem like there is any benefit to drinking alcohol in terms of health. And for a lot of people, it seems like there's a whole lot of drawback, but that ultimately it's a genetic crapshoot. You may or may not have higher risk there. That's why there are some people that seem to just drink incessantly and have no issues. But when you're having this reaction, that's your body saying, "Hey, cut it out."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's even one paper that looks at a specific cancer of the digestive tract, esophageal squamous cell carcinoma. And just as an example, for the heavy drinkers who flush versus the heavy drinkers who do not experience the flush, there is a much higher risk associated, or much greater likelihood to have a cancer develop like this. So, again, one small tidbit there, but worth mentioning that there's an evidence basis behind, I guess this part of the discussion.
Known risk.
Yes.
Known risk.
Yeah. And so, even looking at the way this question is framed, it's one of those like, hey, what's that one weird trick that I can do to maybe drink a little more or to get rid of this? I'm a social person and I don't want to have to worry about this. And I think that's completely fair and that's normal. But again, you just want to be careful because the only thing that you can really do is mask the symptoms in this case. We got this histamine, response. If we just focus on that, we got this massive histamine response. What can you do? Well, maybe you try an antihistamine or an H2 blocker off label like Pepcid or Zantac, famotidine, and maybe that can suppress the flush a little bit. I don't really know the evidence base for that.
Right.
It's plausible, right? Got too much histamine, suppress the histamine. Maybe you take that before you drink or when you're drinking. Can't really sit here and recommend that again, because it's more about what's happening under the hood, with the enzymatic processes occurring while as your body attempts to process the alcohol. Yeah. So I would not recommend doing anything besides maybe just real person to real person, like just trying to change what you drink potentially, or just if it is red wine, you just know that that's not going to be the most fun.
It sounds like abstinence is going to be the best policy, or at the very least, minimizing as much as possible.
Right.
Welch's grape juice.
Yeah.
It's so good though.
Sparkling cider.
So much sugar. I love it, but boy, it's not good for you either.
I mean, there's also some plausibility behind eating before you drink. I mean, it's like what you would tell somebody on their 21st birthday.
Yeah. Go eat some food.
Make sure, you may get, something that's, something of substance, that's going to absorb all that.
Is there anything said about grease? I remember people who say get greasy food. It soaks up all the...
Yeah, like all these crazy... all these crazy weird tricks to mitigate the hangover effect. When really it's like, I don't know. Yeah, you could try eating a little more. The thought is that by slowing down the absorption, eat food beforehand, gastric emptying is slowed. You pace yourself a little bit while you drink, and then maybe it just it just like blunts the
response.
Yes.
Gives your body more time to clear things.
Yeah.
But
I just don't know how much were we going to sit here and stand behind that? Is that what this is?
Yeah. No, we're not. No, we're not. All right. Well, yeah, sorry, listener. It sounds like your body is sending you a pretty clear signal that this is something to be avoided, generally speaking, and it could have substantial long-term implications. So we want you to stick around. Maybe have some grape juice.
Grape juice.
Yeah, it's not as good, but I get it. Well, that is it for us today. If you learned something, please share the episode with somebody you know, somebody else maybe who's dealing with these same flushing issues, or anybody else who just needs to learn this information. Thumbs up, 5-star review, leave a comment down below. We answer every single question and comment that we get. If you would like to send us a question via email, it is questions@askjoedimatteo.com. That's questions@askjoedimatteo.com. That's also the website where you can find this show and the past episodes of this show, and the email newsletter to keep you updated on other sales, all of the essentials lines of products that we have, the essentials line of products that we have there on our website, askjoedimatteo.com. Go check it out. And that's it for us. Josiah Schweinberg, Dante DiMatteo, I'm Tyler Andrews. We'll see you next time.